So this next section is going to take a little bit of time, but I hope you find it interesting and informative. How about just affirming and validating? Because I doubt I'm going to say much that many of you haven't heard before, but there are some of you drawn here tonight for whom this is new. You're new on the journey. You may have a loved one who passed recently and you just need to trust. So I hope that this will help you. But I received an email from a member of this community, one of y'all, who has studied with me and was disturbed by some things that she saw in a webinar online given by the author of several books about the afterlife. And I happen to have read every one of those books. So I'm familiar with this author, who I will not name tonight. And she asked me if I could validate some of these things that the woman said. And I said, well, I don't want to do it secondhand. I'll check into this. So I actually paid for the webinar and watched the whole 2-hour webinar. And I have to tell you that as I watched it, I got a little stirred up more and more as I watched, because a couple statements were said at the beginning that contradicted what is my personal experience. And then more statements contradicted what is not just my experience, but that of many mediums who I respect and have worked with. And I had to use all the tools in my toolbook not to really get spun up. So we're going to talk about the lessons from that webinar. But before I start, as I was pondering this situation, the very next day I got a message from Sanaya about how to deal with issues when you get defensive. And that's what I mean about spun up. I'm ready to defend mediumship, defend this work. And I'd like to read to you what they said. Choose your words very carefully. This applies to you too. Anytime you notice defensiveness, okay? When you need to protect something, when you feel righteous, self-righteous, what you say can be misconstrued quite easily by others, for it must go through their filters after going through yours. Picture the sluice, right? Filters are the result of life experience and defensive boundaries. All humans have them. They go with the story. How to get around this? Go first and foremost to the heart. Are you being defensive? Only the ego has something to protect. At the deeper level, there is no separation and hence nothing to protect. Go deeper and speak from the heart as a means of staying connected while you share information. Do you notice the difference between share information and state your case? The former is much more likely to be helpful and heard. You are so very loved, they said. So I'm going to do my best this evening to simply share whatever information I have about mediumship from the heart. I'm not going to state my case. That's what I wanted to do at first. So I've looked very carefully at how I went through the video, and I wrote down statements that contradicted my personal experience and knowledge that has been accrued from others over 12 years. And I'm just going to share information to allow you to make your own decision through your own filters, okay? So the speaker's main message is that we don't need psychics or mediums because we can do this too. I absolutely agree. And any of you who have studied with me know that my main goal is to teach you to do this too. I would love to be out of a job as far as readings. I would much rather write about the afterlife, but I sure love connecting across the veil. But I know we can all do this to some extent. Not everybody's calling is to be a medium. However, who can deny that because of our filters, we each only get one slice of the watermelon, right? So why wouldn't we enjoy consulting different mediums to see what piece of the story, what aspect of our loved ones, what information our loved ones can get through when it has to go through different mediums filters. So that's the reason why. However, I do caution you all, don't get addicted to mediums. Don't go to as many as you can to get the different pieces of the puzzle. All you need is enough for someone to show you they are still part of your life. And then may it just be an enjoyable visit, maybe twice a year, once a year, or once maybe. All you need to say, now I want to have that experience myself, okay? So I didn't resonate with several statements she made about the afterlife in general. She visited the afterlife in several near-death experiences and made some very definitive statements about the afterlife. And I couldn't help but think that that's like if I visited California and then told everybody that I knew all there was about the United States, only from visiting one piece of the United States. I know that every one of us has unique experiences and we share them, which is why I invite everybody to read near-death experience accounts often. I brought home 2 books from the conference, as if I've never read afterlife experiences. I just eat them up because you learn different facets all the time. And so I don't know that any of us could ever make definitive statements, this is the only way it is, when we are part of a creative, evolving universe. So the only one absolute is pure being from which everything arises and anything arises. So please keep an open mind. I'm trying to do the best at that as well. So here are some of the claims that I would like you to just give your heart test to as I go through. The heart test, again, how does that feel? Does your heart clench and say that just doesn't feel right? I'm talking about both the claims and my response to that. All right. So the first claim was, and what did not help the issue was that some of these claims were actually put on slides in the webinar. When people see things in print, they take it as absolute truth, and then it becomes fact. So you be the judge. Mediums get their information from the information field around the client, or simply data from the soul's information field. One of the greatest things I love sharing with people is that this is not just data in these communications. It's a two-way interaction. I showed a video in my conference presentation this last weekend with snippets from my readings, and you see me take on the mannerisms, even the facial expressions of these spirits as we merge our fields. That's not data. We are merging and I'm becoming one with them. They're so clever, so creative. I feel their physical symptoms in my body. I'll never forget the reading that I've shared hundreds of times of a young man. And I looked at him and I said, you haven't told me what you did for a living. All silently, my client can't hear this. And he said, swept his hand out and said, what your husband is doing right now. And he pointed in my mind's eye out the window behind my client. I looked and there was Ty kneeling down behind our bus, stripping wires on the hitch. And I looked at this guy's mom and I said, your son just showed me he was an electrician. And she said, yes, he was. Now, is that data? No, that was a clever, creative young man who saw the big picture, what my husband was doing, heard my question and answered it in words, not data. My guys just said, move on, because I have a whole list of not data examples here. But my favorite, okay, they said you can tell that one, was the lady whose husband in the middle of the reading said, you tell my wife, don't you dare take those pills in your purse. And she looked at me shocked and she said, how do you know that? And I said, because he's right here and he just said it. And she told me that she had decided if she didn't hear that her husband still existed, she was going to take all these pills that she had stopped on the way to the reading to get and put in her purse. And there's her husband, knew all about that and said, you have a lot more to experience here. It's not your time. That's not data. So another claim in this webinar, there are no higher beings. This is just you and source. Well, I'm giving you a whole bunch of examples this evening of guides telling me about watermelons and hot burning coals. My guides are definitely a higher frequency than I am. I encourage you to watch my video, Archangel Michael is Real, and test the evidence, the overwhelming synchronicities in that video. And I know all of you out there who have communicated with angels and archangels and your guides know there are higher beings. However, the deeper you dive into this, the more you ask the question, who am I? You will come to know that you and I and the higher beings are all expressions of one light. There's just one watermelon, many seeds. Okay? So it just depends on point of view. I love reading NDEs because many people sense beings of light around them, but ultimately merge into the one light. And then they hear it's not your time, you're going back. And they then come back into a body to become one of the many beings, the seeds in the watermelon, right? So this is how the one source plays out through many beings. And we help each other by appearing as ourselves at multiple levels, multiple frequencies that all interpenetrate each other. And we learn and we grow and we love by interacting with higher levels. That's why we have higher and lower levels. We learn and grow through relationship. So yes, ultimately, there's only one of us here. But what fun is that? After a while, we want to go out and play with each other. And here we are, and it is the same across the veil. That I can't prove, can I? So won't it be fun when we transition and we find out and we have our own experience? Boy, doesn't that take the fear out of death? What a joy this work is. All righty, another claim. Nobody gets an hour's worth of information in a reading with the medium. They give you a few things and the rest is just talk. Well, I think I shared with you earlier how that one woman in 45 minutes got 82 pieces of information. I kind of petered out after that. That was a lot of information. Most of my readings these days go 45 minutes because after that, how much more do your loved ones need to tell you that they're right here? In the conference I shared of one young man at Helping Parents Heal who gave me 62 pieces of information in 45 minutes. In Wolf's message, 45 minutes, 45 pieces of information and verifiable facts about himself that he gave me in the dark in bed. I don't know how long that lasted. I shared with one of my Shift Network classes a reading for a woman named Sandy. Her son John came through with a message for his brother with 98 verifiable pieces of evidence. I've pretty much filled an hour with that one. That's just me. I remember somebody that I taught who was giving 2-hour readings because she couldn't stop talking. I can't talk that much. And I know that when we hear from our loved ones, we would love the medium to talk for hours. When you get somebody who really gets evidence and you have no doubt it's your loved one, there's no need to fill it in with small talk. So I feel that this person who made these claims simply had not had the benefit of a session with a well-trained, evidence-based medium. I have online courses, at least 6 of them. And they all show how to get good evidence and how to really discern that you are speaking directly to the soul of that person. And this is not data. You can definitely tune in to the aura of your client and pick up psychic information about them. And that's why I actually design exercises to shift back and forth between going psychic, as we call it, and getting verifiable information, two-way conversation, engaging with the souls, because there really is a distinct difference in feeling. Another claim that I'd like to share information about, they are making guesses, mediums. She claims we're just guessing the information about a loved one. So she stated that she went into a reading, had a reading, and, quote, sat like a stone. I'm not going to give them anything, was her decision. Well, if you've taken any of my classes, you know how important every person in a reading is. The medium's energy, what they vibrate, what they radiate. The spirit hopefully is a really good communicator and has learned how to communicate telepathically. And the sitter, the client, their energy is so important. If you are skeptical, you will get what you radiate. Why? Because we are creative beings created in the image of the one creator. Your consciousness manifests. If you expect nothing, you're very likely to going to get that. If you sit like a stone, trust me, that is an energetic wall you put up. So I'm not surprised that that was her experience. So a good medium will put you at ease, We'll tell you how important it is to be open, and we'll limit how much information you get, but not to the point of putting up an energetic wall. We'll tell you simply, let us know if what we're sharing with you makes sense. Say yes or no. And a good medium will not give the impression of fishing for details, because that's the last thing we want our clients to know. But the point here is when she said, I sat like a stone because I wasn't going to give them anything. You get what you intend. Intention is all important. She said, people who channel are channeling information from their own information field. In other words, just saying what you know. I could not have been channeling Sanaya for as many years as I have if I only shared information I already knew. I guess I would have known a lot more than I don't know. They just told me I'm being incoherent. Okay. The wisdom they has shared has changed my life. I hope it's changed other people's lives, but test again what a channeler tells you in your heart. But I know that I have asked Sanaya on many occasions to give us evidence. Bev was my witness in a small group where I channeled Sanaya, and they brought through that someone in her family had diabetes. They just had a blood test. They had not been tested for diabetes. They were tested for something else. And Sanaya, in that channeling session, came right through and said, the person has diabetes. This is why, and this is what you will tell them how to handle it. And the very next day, that person called Bev and said, you won't believe it. My blood test came back and I have diabetes. That's just one example of many. I remember the day that Sanaya's Daily Way message talked about puppies and how wonderful puppies are and used them as an analogy of love and connection. Turns out it was National Puppy Day. Who knew? Sanaya. Okay, so that was not in my own information field, but here's the point. Listen carefully. There is only one information field, okay? And our guides have a higher perspective. When you dance with spirit, they are able to get information through to you. Another claim. I hope you're finding this helpful. Souls in the afterlife feel no great need to communicate with an incarnated soul, that's you and me, because the rest of your soul is right there in the afterlife. The latter part of that is true. All souls are spacious light. They are flowing interconnected energy, and they know it. But they also know that an aspect of them is still playing a role here, incarnated, and that it's really helpful to hear from souls who have passed. And so the souls across the veil play the game and say, let's help them. Let's come through. Let's give them beautiful signs. Let's give them hope to help them in their journey. Even though at the soul level, we are playing. At night, my friends, you guys are talking to each other across the veil, interacting with your guides, resting up from the roles you're playing here. So feel no great need to incarnate. They know you'd be okay if you never heard from them again while you're in the body, because you will eventually catch up. So no great need. They simply know it will be helpful to you, and that's why they come through. Okay? She made a claim. Souls do not describe the afterlife. Well, if you go to my website to the gifts section, you can download a free book called Awakening. And in the back of that is a huge download I got from my guides describing what the afterlife is like. They were answering a question from afterlife researcher Dr. Ken Ring, who wrote a great book about near-death experiences called Lessons from the Light. I sent their download to him to answer his question, what's it like in the afterlife? This man, who has investigated over 2,000 NDEs, near-death experiences, said it was the most amazing document he's ever read, especially one written directly to him. So I encourage you to read it, what it's like in the afterlife. And then my most popular video on YouTube, which shows people really want to know what it's like in the afterlife, is what those in the afterlife are doing. Something like that. Bev will put that URL on the video as well. But they will give us evidence to show us in the reading what they're doing across the veil. One of my most recent examples is a woman's mother across the veil. I said, she's showing me, your mom, that she's planting flowers across the veil, and they're all different colors, rows and rows and rows of different colored flowers. And my client said, well, that makes sense because she was a florist when she was here. Isn't that great? And it was real easy for mom to do that. She didn't have to bend over anymore and, no achy body across the veil. You want to create roses? There they are. Beautiful. This one, she claimed the spirits and mediums don't give us messages with eternal truths. This one's easy. Please read my book, Wolf's Message. My entire mission these days is to share the eternal truths from Wolf, which fit together in what I call the awakened way. The awakened way of living came from a message from across the veil through a medium, this one right here. And she said, oops, okay, I don't want to laugh. If these were our loved ones, wouldn't they give us beautiful messages? This is what tells me she hasn't had a reading with a reputable medium, because this is the whole goal of those across the veil. Yes, if you're an evidence-based medium, you want to get those gold nuggets. You want to capture the essence of the loved one, so the loved one says, oh my God, they're here, just like I shared with you earlier. But then once you've validated, yes, they're here, what's the message? What is it they want you to know? And in this case, of the one, it was, this is why I took my own life. Remember that? But the beautiful messages of, I'm okay, I love you. They may sound generic, but that's what we need to hear. But these can come with evidence, like the mom that said, I can see clearly now after the illness that clouded my mind. And there was a double meaning, and my client burst into tears and said, that was our song. I can see clearly now. Or the husband who said to his wife from across the veil, I love you to the moon and back. And she pulls out a greeting card where he had written that exact message. Or in the documentary about my story, the woman whose husband said through me, you are the best thing that ever happened to me, word for word. And she burst into tears and could barely utter, that's what he always said to me. God, anybody else get goosebumps? How could you get a more beautiful message than that? And I just want to end this whole thing here with an example submitted, about 2 examples by members of our community. When I went on Facebook and I said, when have you gotten a meaningful message from across the veil in addition to just, I love you, just, I love you? So this one woman, well, it's actually Valerie, who's part of my team. She said in a reading, the spirit said, grab the wheel. You are no longer a passenger. You are now the driver. That message came from a dear friend in spirit 2 days after her decision to leave her marriage. The friend across the veil loved to drive, and a few days before that, she had purchased a birthday card with the message, grab the wheel. So, by the way, we give credit to that reading to the wonderful medium Colleen Smith. So good job, Colleen, for that one. This one just makes me laugh. I love this so much for a meaningful message. My son has a memorial bench by the river near his and his partner's home. My daughter-in-law was recently concerned when she sold their house. She was concerned about leaving the area and no longer being close to the memorial bench. She stressed about it for days. We went to see a medium, and the first thing that came through from my son was, quote, I'm not a bench. We took this as permission for her to do what she had to do. We felt so happy. No one would have known her anguish. This made me feel so good. Isn't that great? Evidence-filled messages, just super duper, super duper. Okay. I will just wrap up this whole session that I asked Spirit, am I supposed to share this with everyone? Because I don't want to get defensive. I don't want to make anybody look bad, but I really wanted to share this information with you. And they said, you've been having signs from a cougar. Look up the meaning of cougar as a spirit animal. And they were right. When all of this came about, we were still on the road in our RV. I had sat down to do a reading on Zoom, and I could see that on screen, my backdrop, the blinds were open, and the RV right behind us was the brand name Cougar. So in the screen on my reading was these big letters Cougar, and I had to quick get up and shut the blinds because I didn't want that to be on the recording. Next day, I went to do another reading, and it was still there again, the cougar. So again, 2 days in a row, had to close the blinds. That night I was sharing it with Ty about how the cougar was coming up. And I said jokingly to Ty, I'm no cougar. I don't go for the younger guys. I go for the older ones. Well, what's so funny is on the webinar I watched with this woman who I just shared with you, she made a joke and mentioned, I'm not a cougar. The very same thing came up that evening. The next day, the Cougar RV left, another one came in its place. It's not that common of a model. So the guides say, look up Cougar. When I asked, am I supposed to share all this publicly? And here's what it says about Cougar as a spirit messenger. In general, if Cougar symbolism has entered your life, take it as a sign that it's time for you to take charge of the situation and show your strength. See how spirit will pull out all the stops. So I hope you learned a lot. Some of you already knew that mediumship is real, but I'm so honored to do this work. It's life-saving in many cases for people who are desperate, and it's healing in all cases when we can show that love never dies.